Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'd like to play you this video to illustrate that many nations, not just us, many nations out there have from time to time been forced to make tough decisions. And those who have stepped up and taken those tough decisions have prospered. And those who have shied away from those tough decisions have suffered. Just listen to this.
The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperations, is over. Yesterday, in the latest salvo in his trade war, President Trump again imposed unjustified tariffs on our nation in violation of our existing trade agreements. And our response to these latest tariffs is to fight, is to protect, and to build. We will fight the U.S. tariffs with retaliatory trade actions of our own that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impacts here in Canada. Last night, the President of the United States reached out to schedule a call. I appreciate this opportunity to discuss how we can protect our workers and build our economies. I will make clear to the President that those interests are best served by cooperation and mutual respect, including our sovereignty. It's my solemn promise that when President Trump threatens us again, we will fight back. We will fight back with everything we have to get the best deal for Canada. We will build an independent future for our country, stronger than ever.
It's 8 years since a British Prime Minister stepped on Chinese soil. And so on this delegation, you're making history. You're part of the change that we're bringing about. And that's consistent with everything that we've done in government, particularly internationally, because we are resolute about being outward-looking, about taking opportunities, building relationships, having confidence globally, and always being absolutely focused on our national interest. And it is in our national interest to engage with China. It's the second biggest economy in the world. If you take Hong Kong alongside China, it's our third biggest trading partner.
These are tough decisions. And if you were to look back on Zimbabwe, I would say that Zimbabwe is a failed state. And I've said that before. The tough decision we have got to make is to accept that the present political system is not working. Some people have hesitated in making that decision. We have got to be honest with ourselves here. We know that ever since the country's independence in 1980, Zanu PF has rigged the elections. This is a historic fact. The 1980 elections themselves, Zanu PF, like all the other delegates at the Lancaster House talks, agreed that they would withdraw their freedom fighters from the field during the campaign period. But by the time Robert Mugabe and company arrived back in Zimbabwe, they'd made a decision that they will keep a significant number of their operatives in the field. And those operatives were instructed to tell the electorate that if Zanu PF does not win the election, the Bush war would continue. how anyone can still pretend that was a free, fair, and credible elections is nauseating. Some of the other political parties in 1980 knew that there were certain areas where those operatives were operating. They could not go there to campaign. There were no-go areas. And when Zanu PF won the 1980 elections and got their legs under the desk, within 3 years, they started the Kukura-Wundi. The primary purpose of the Kukura-Wundi was to force the only other political party that could seriously challenge Zanu PF's hold on power, i.e. PF ZAPU, led by the late Dr. Joshua Nkomo, to give up its existence as an independent party. And they finally did in 1987, after the death of over 20,000 innocent Zimbabweans. And that cleared the way for Zanu PF to impose the de facto one-party state that has ruled the country up to this day. The nation is a failed state because we have got corrupt, incompetent, and murderous thugs ruling the country. They've managed to stay in power all these years by rigging the elections. If there's one election that reminded us that Zimbabwe is a de facto one-party state, is the 2008 elections. The preamble to that is that SADC had forced Zanu PF to accept a number of electoral reforms to allow a meaningful election process to go ahead. The people of Zimbabwe had seized on that opportunity and had voted for change. But before the election results could be announced, Mnangagwa and Chiwenga stepped in. And this is what they did.
I also know that Mugabe conceded defeat on 2008. He phoned Mbeki and Obasanjo to concede defeat. I hope that Thabo Mbeki and Obasanjo will one day make that public. But one of them, I won't say which one, told me that Mugabe phoned them that Saturday night and said, look, I lost the election and I concede defeat. And I know that Mugabe stuck to his guns. I was prepared to go. His wife was since bags packed to go somewhere on the following day when Mnangagwa and Chiwenga approached him and said, you stay where you are. And then they contrived the runoff, sadly with the help of South Africa. And runoff took place, very violent. 360 people were killed. The South African, I came here as part of a delegation to Cape Town to see members of the ANC. I don't want to mention names, they're my friends. I saw them, and through them, a cabinet committee subcommittee of South African cabinet was set up on the Zimbabwe issue. It was on the basis of that cabinet committee that South Africa did not recognize the runoff. And indeed, it was the basis of that committee that Thabo sent the generals to South Africa, to Zimbabwe. I met them, and I was one of the few to have read the report, because I was flying to Joburg in the company of General Romano, who was a friend. He passed away, no? So, yeah. And I also took people who had lost their hands in the violence to the South African embassy in Harare. And Romano broke down in tears. How can a liberation movement treat these people like that? He was a broken man. So there's no doubt at all here in South Africa as to the brutality of the regime in Harare. So it amazes me, it angers me, in fact, when I hear the nonsense coming out of people like Mbalula's mouth. They know it.
We in Zimbabwe also know it. When you think that somebody like Mnangagwa in Chiwenga committed those atrocities for which they should have gone to jail, they should be in Chikurubi, and yet they are in State House. Mnangagwa and Chiwenga have never been democratically elected by anybody in Zimbabwe. Mnangagwa rigged 2023 elections. SADC condemned those elections as flawed. And he had the audacity of turning around and saying he didn't care. This is the man who is president.
Vana vakatuka Zanu PF kana ini ndonyanyisa kufara kuita zvakanaka. Ukavona vavengi vakwashi kurumbidza nekuchikanganisa. Ukavona vachiti Zanu PF yakaipa farai. You are doing great things for your country. Hongu takaita elections edu kuna vamwe vaitaura zvisina musoro zvikanzi maelection arafamba zvakanaka ndezvavo.
No. That is just nonsense. When outsiders like the European Union, the Americans, condemned our elections as flawed, the regime dismissed them as colonialists. SADC and the AU election observers condemned Zimbabwe's 2023 elections. We cannot pretend that these are also our detractors. That is nonsense. I think as a nation, we have to step up and say, no. We have tolerated a political system that has denied ordinary Zimbabweans a meaningful say in the governance of the country for 46 years and counting. This has to stop. This would not be complete without mentioning that the GNU of 2008 to 2018, which was made possible by SADC and the AU, gave the country the best opportunity ever to implement the democratic reforms. The MDC leaders sold out. They failed to implement even one token reform. So part of our decision must be a clear statement to the MDC CCC leadership that they have failed the nation, they've sold out. And we need a radical change. Why some people have struggled for the last 3 years at counting to accept that Chamisa lied to con people to participate in 2023 elections. Beggars belief.
Makorokoto Zimbabwe nokuti hakuna munhu anomira kana denga raronga plan. Denga raronga plan, denga harifo iri. Plan ya Mwari haifo iri. Ini ndatanga kugadzira cabinet. There is no way we are not going to form a new cabinet. There is no way we are not going to have a celebration. There is no way we are not going to have an inauguration. Let's start preparing for our inauguration. Let's start preparing for our celebration.
Chamisa has just announced that he's coming back on the dancing floor. And I can tell you now, he is coming back to tell people once again to participate in 2028 elections, flawed as they are, to convince people that this time he is going to win, only for people to participate and give Zanu PF legitimacy and perpetuate the dictatorship. This is what we have to stop. Stop people participating in these flawed elections, and you will deny Zanu PF legitimacy. The regime will be forced to go into another GNU comparable to the 2008 to 2013 GNU. And this time, we will implement the reforms and finally get the nation back on a democratic footing. Many nations are being forced to make tough decisions. The toughest decision that Zimbabweans have to accept and make is that the present political system of Zanu PF and their corrupt and incompetent sidekick, MDC, has failed. We need change. And we can get that change by making sure that people do not participate in a flawed 2028 election. This is not an impossible task. And what is more, it is a task we must carry out without failure. Think about it. Good night.